Growing up, my dad was a mystery. He never spoke about his past, only leaving behind fragments of his rough childhood, a broken home, gangs, and a father who struggled with addiction. Our relationship wasn't much better. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short and strained. Things got worse when my mom left us when I was 16. I figured she just couldn't handle it anymore. After my older brother died of an overdose and my other brother went to jail, it felt like the family was falling apart. So, it was just me and my dad, living in our old duplex. One night, I came home late after spending some time with friends. My dad was in his usual spot, slumped on the couch, a half-empty bottle of Jack Daniel's honey in hand. He didn't drink often, but when he did, he went all in. I was trying to sneak past him, stoned and tired, when his voice rang out from behind me. "Seth." I froze. He almost never called out to me like that. When I turned around, his eyes were glassy, but they had an intensity one hadn't seen before. "Come here. I need to talk to you." I didn't want to. I just wanted to go upstairs and sleep, but there was something in his voice that made me stop. Reluctantly, I turned and walked over to him. He was sitting up, his posture rigid, bottle clenched tightly in his hand. "What do you want, Dad?" I asked, my voice tense. He stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to gather his thoughts. "I need to tell you something. It's important." I sighed. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" He shook his head, his gaze never leaving mine. "No, it can't." His seriousness unnerved me. My dad wasn't one for deep talks, especially not in this state. I sat down on the couch across from him, trying to stay calm. But something about the way he looked at me felt off, like he was seeing me for the first time. "You ever wonder why your mom left?" he asked, his voice low. I stiffened. We never talked about her. It was like she'd just disappeared from our lives, erased from every conversation. "I figured she just couldn't handle it anymore," I said, avoiding his eyes. "With everything that happened." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "No, that's not why she left." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" He took a long swig from the bottle, then set it down. "She didn't leave, Seth. She never left." I frowned, confusion clouding my mind. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "She's been here the whole time." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest, a strange sense of dread creeping up my spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she's still here," he said, his voice calm, deliberate. "Buried in the backyard." The room seemed to spin for a moment. I couldn't process what he was saying. My mouth went dry, and I stared at him, trying to figure out if this was some sick joke. What are you talking about?" I whispered. His expression didn't change. "I couldn't let her leave, Seth. She was going to take you boys away from me. I couldn't let that happen." My blood ran cold. You're saying?" "I did what I had to do," he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion. "She got what she deserved." I stumbled to my feet, the room spinning around me. "You're lying. You're drunk, you don't know what you're saying." He didn't move. "Go look if you don't believe me. Dig up the garden." I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as the reality of his words hit me. Without thinking, I bolted out the back door and grabbed a shovel from the shed. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. This couldn't be real. He couldn't be telling the truth. But as I started digging, my heart pounding in my ears, I felt the shovel hit something solid. I dropped to my knees, scraping away the dirt with my hands, and that's when I saw it, a piece of fabric, dirty and torn, buried deep in the earth. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't need to dig any further. I knew what I'd find. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be true. Suddenly, I heard the back door creak open. I turned to see my dad standing there, watching me. He wasn't holding the bottle anymore. His hands were empty, but his eyes were cold. "Told you," he said, his voice eerily calm. I backed away, my legs trembling. You're insane." He took a step forward. "Maybe. But I did what I had to do." Panic surged through me. I turned and ran, my feet slipping in the dirt as I raced back into the house. I needed to get out. I needed to get away. I ran upstairs to my room, slamming the door behind me. I grabbed my phone and called the police, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. My mind was a blur, my heart racing as I told the dispatcher everything that had happened. When the police arrived, my dad was gone. He had vanished into the night, leaving behind only the horrible truth of what he'd done. They dug up the backyard the next day, just as he'd said. And they found her. My mom. Buried deep beneath the garden, just like he'd told me. The weeks that followed were a blur of questions, investigations, and sleepless nights. My dad was still out there, somewhere, and every creak of the floor, every shadow outside my window made my heart race with fear. I don't know where he is now. The police haven't found him yet, but I know he's not gone for good. I can feel it. Sometimes, late at night, I hear strange noises coming from the backyard, the sound of footsteps, the rustle of leaves. And sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear her voice. She's still here, waiting. And I'm afraid it's only a matter of time before he comes back.